Hello, parents and professionals, and today I'm going to be talking to you about separation anxiety. I'm going to be sharing with you my top 3 tips for managing separation anxiety, and I'm also going to tell you about where separation anxiety usually begins. So, if you need that valuable information in your life, then just keep on watching. So, for those of you who are members of the Parents and Professionals membership, you may have already spotted the video in the Talking About series between myself and Priya Ramlani, where we were specifically tuned in and talking about school refusal. Now, this is a really hot topic at the moment, and separation anxiety can certainly form part of it, but they are, as I'll explain in just a moment, quite different issues. If you know a child or young person who is experiencing school refusal at the moment, then make sure you check out the conversation between myself and Priya Ramlani in the Talking About section of the Parents and Professionals membership area, because there we go deep and we have an extensive conversation about what school refusal looks like and, crucially, what you can do about that. And I know that that's a subject area that is really prevalent at the moment because of children going back to school post-COVID and the fact that there's half term coming up and the Christmas holidays not too far away. And so there are all of these future scenarios of school refusal that might be on the agenda as well. So separation anxiety, as I said, is sometimes tied in with that. Sometimes we may see school refusal happening because of separation anxiety. Natural separation anxiety happens in a child's first couple of years in their life, normally when they are babies. You'll sometimes see that a child favours one parent over the other, or that grandparents who they already know, love, and get on well with go to pick them up and then they just burst into tears. So they go through a natural stage of anxiety about being separated from their main carer, and it can be absolutely heartbreaking. But this is something that naturally resolves itself. However, sometimes some parents will almost overcompensate during that stage, and so that bond between them becomes even stronger and makes it harder for them to be accepting of other people that they should also be bonding with. So some children don't come out of that separation anxiety stage because they have a parent who unwittingly ends up perpetuating the issue. Sometimes separation anxiety happens later on because there's been some other kind of trauma, anxiety, or just a worry that a child has got in their head. Often when I've worked with children with separation anxiety and even older teenagers, I've discovered that they have an idea in their head that something bad is going to happen to the person that they're anxious about being separated from. And they might actually see pictures in their mind of a bad thing happening, sort of imagining worst case scenarios. For those of you who are NLP practitioners, we can resolve this very simply with a submodalities intervention. For those of you who are not NLP practitioners, who are scratching your heads wondering, what was that what word she just said?
What was that?
Submodalities are the coding that we give to our experiences, our memories, and even the stuff that is just pure fantasy. It's the detail in which we see, hear, and feel the experiences that we are having, and by tweaking and changing those, we can begin to adjust the power or meaning that an experience has for us. So even though we can't kind of erase a bad thought from somebody's head, we can kind of play with it enough that it doesn't seem significant to them anymore. So when we are dealing with something that looks like separation anxiety, we first want to make sure that it definitely is separation anxiety. Because for those of you who are in the Parents and Professionals membership, you'll see in my talk with Priya that she highlights actually sometimes what looks like school refusal isn't school refusal. Well, sometimes what looks like separation anxiety isn't separation anxiety. maybe it's something else, and we're going to figure that out by having a conversation and really getting to the bottom of what it is that's going on in that young person's head. Maybe they're not worried about leaving you and going back to school. Maybe they're actually anxious about being in large groups again, in which case it's more like social anxiety. Maybe they're not anxious about leaving you. Maybe they are anxious about being in a small enclosed space again. Maybe they're not anxious about leaving you. Maybe they just hate school. You know, sometimes that happens too. And it just presents itself as separation anxiety when in actual fact, it's more like a temper tantrum. So we need to make sure that we know exactly what the issue is before we start treating it as separation anxiety. One of the key things that you can do is you can commit to persevering through the problem. Because one thing's for sure, if you relent and allow them to stay with you, or if this is a child in your class, send them home to the parent, then it's going to be even more difficult for them to commit to coming back the next day. We need to be able to push through and, in a sense, like bite the bullet, suck up the pain for a little while and go through that period of discomfort so that we teach them the skills to become resilient enough to be able to cope with separating from that parent or carer in the future. What we don't want to do is to give up at the first sign of trouble, because what that will then do is set a bit of a precedence that actually, if you're struggling, it's okay. You don't have to stick with it. Mom, dad, whoever it is going to be there for you in just a jiffy. So even if in the beginning we're perhaps starting with a more manageable stretch of time that this young person is away from their carer for, and then extending it over the following days, weeks, and months, then at least we're pushing in the right direction and not giving up just because things are looking really uncomfortable. And on that note, the sense of guilt and pain and discomfort that this puts parents and carers through can be quite tremendous. So we need to make sure that those people know they really need to do their absolute best to react as normally as possible. Don't get angry, don't get anxious, don't anticipate the worry or the stress that's going to be coming. Instead, just act normal, because we want this to be as emotionless as possible when this young person is presenting symptoms of high anxiety and high emotion. There's no point in this parent or carer investing a ton of emotion into it themselves, because it's likely to not be the right one. You don't need to be super enthusiastic. You don't need to be super cross about what's happening either. And we certainly don't want you getting super upset about it. Will it be distressing? Chances are it probably will be. But the more that you can, in your own mind, be almost quite businesslike about it and keep your own emotions in check, then the less chance there is of us fanning the flames of this young person that we're dealing with and making the emotions they're already experiencing elevate and even stronger than they already were. So these are my suggestions for you around dealing with separation anxiety. As I mentioned, in our parents and professionals area, there is even more detail specifically about school refusal that you can find in the talking about section. It's a long conversation between myself and one of our specialist practitioners, Priya Amlani. So please go and check that out. If you found this video today either useful, informative, or helpful in some way, then please go ahead and click the red subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and click the notifications bell so that you get notified the next time I upload one of these videos. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!